feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Wednesday night. It's November 13th, and they lost again, Kyle. 106-98, the Blazers win. I'm out here in Portland with Kyle Theige, and like we did last night, we're going to run through some of our takeaways from this one, but also I think just kind of recap the two-game set themes from these two games against the Blazers. And I want to start by playing a clip from Ant that we just got in the locker room, because I think that kind of sums it up, and then we'll start getting your takes. But here's Ant in the locker room, I think, giving his themes of this two-game set against the Blazers.
Games like these is hard because, you know, everybody feel like we're supposed to win, but that team over there is fucking good and they play hard. So we see what it takes, man. Everybody want to beat us, so we got to come out with a chip on our shoulder. We got to get the chip back. Whenever we get the chip back, we'll be back where we need to be.
Find that in the next kind of 48 hours before Sacramento?
I'm pretty sure we're going to have it in Sacramento. It's the other games. It's the games like these. We got to get it, because when we play teams that's, you know, good, that's up to the standard, we come ready to fucking play every night.
That's an unhealthy relationship, though, right?
100%.
Like playing up or down to the competition?
Yeah, that's maturity. We got to mature as a team, 1 through 15, including myself.
So, Kyle, I mean, this is a theme with this team. You could say for the past few years, right? There's been a playing up and down to the competition level. It's stretches of time or a handful of games where the Wolves do not have that urgency. Ant called it the chip on his shoulder. Rudy, when we talked to him, says they're not playing with that edge. And obviously, we've seen them have that this season. It's not like that's not something at all in the DNA of this team. But what is for sure in the DNA of this team is this volatility. And you're playing Chicago, okay? You're not going to really show up the first half of that game. You got a two-game set against the Blazers, who you just beat handily a week ago. You're not going to have that same effort and commitment and, yeah, chip on the shoulder. Like Ant said, I think he knows it. I think he knows he is partially, if not largely, responsible for some of that volatility in the effort and focus and chip and edge to this team. What do you make of this? Being as the star player on this team is 23 years old, is special, but also just there's kind of a variance to what you're going to get from him.
Yeah, I mean, a little game of two truths and a lie, right? Portland did play hard, and 100% not good to have that volatility. It's a lie that that team over there was really fucking good, because I watched all the Blazers games and they lost by 60 points combined over the weekend. They're a young team that's struggling, but in credit to Chauncey Billups in this kind of 24-hour back-to-back, he got those guys to play really hard. I mean, Donovan Clingan tonight was phenomenal. I think he had a career high in points, rebounds, and blocks. His first double-double as a rookie. He was the best player on the court, a court that featured Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, and Anthony Edwards. I was just kept thinking about like a panic button, because like last night it was all about, everyone referenced the same number last night, 11 games in, you know, like an Ant said last night, 24 hours ago, it's great that we get to play them again. And they came out tonight in that first quarter, 33, I think it was 33-23 after one. They gave you that energy. They gave you a little more effort, and then it just completely cratered after that. And it's, you know, again, panic button, whatever. It's just going to be fascinating to see how this, as Finch said last night, you know, these next 10 games are about like finding our identity. Because last year it was defense. It's clearly not defense this year, and there's probably a multitude of things that go into that. But it's just, it's an embarrassing loss. As bad as the Sunday Heat loss was, because you kind of, you know, drop the ball at the end, you do all these dumb things, you blow an 8-point lead with 4 minutes left. They just basically, for 7 quarters against a team that is really, truly trying to, you know, tank one more time, maybe get one more pick, they were just outplayed in 7 quarters. And, you know, some of the things we talked about last night, credit to me, like, hey, maybe Mike sits one night and like you put Nikhil in, and that helped a little bit.
What do you think about their effort and the volatility of their effort? We'll touch on all those things, but just so we can get
it's kind of inexcusable, right? Like you got too many guys. I mean, Rudy Gobert has been someone we've always championed, as he's just not going to let him lose those games. He just got outplayed tonight by a 20-year-old. They did attack the glass a little bit more, but like they were I think they shot 16% from 3. it's just a lot of bad looks. It wasn't like they missed good looks. It was just, again, there wasn't a lot of effort put into running a lot of sets or getting the ball moving. Again, not having a point guard hurt. We should talk about that later, but it's just, how do you excuse or how do you continue to defend lack of effort? I mean, it's one thing if you miss shots and you're cold and you have a bad streak, but how do you defend a lack of effort, especially when, again, this wasn't like they played in San Antonio last night or, in Brooklyn. They played in the same building, in the same city, slept in the same bed. So it's like inexcusable. I see a lot of people being like, this team isn't serious. Those are some real things you can kind of paint right now. And yeah, it's only 12 games into the season now, but you thought that after that first quarter, it's like, okay, maybe they kind of realized that last night they played with their food a little bit, and then they just continue to play with their food, and it bit them in the ass again.
Yeah. I'm what's been sticking with me since we left the locker room is, why do they not have that chip on their shoulder? Why do they not have that edge? Because I do agree with what Ant said there of like, once we find our chip and we have that back, we're going to be good. The question to me is, why do you not have it anymore? And how do you get it back? And if to the former question is, it's because we have different roster, we have different pieces. Well, then that's not correctable because this is your roster that you have. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about, just in this last week, as there has been this volatility, I've been thinking about Kyle Anderson, who's an imperfect player, and he struggled at times here too, but he always had a chip on his shoulder. He had an element of effort to him, a consistency, a pulling. I think Ant specifically, when Ant was floating in a game playing against a sub 500 team where Ant just isn't there, Kyle had something to pull them to. Carl gave them another guy to pick up Ant. Ant shot 0 for 9 from 3 tonight. That could carry the team without. They don't seem to have somebody who can pull them back in, lock them in, and that was a Kyle role. And then they're missing another guy to play through when their star player isn't having a good game, which Ant hasn't had for these last 2 games against the Blazers.
Yeah, and again, you can name drop anyone, right? Patrick Beverley, Kyle Anderson, Conley Towns. You can all these different things. It's like, oh, remember when they had him? 3 different dudes right there. But like, remember when they had him, and it was you just remember all the fun stuff. But I also kind of harken back to what we were talking about, like pregame with Jim Pete and Alan Horton, about like, I've kind of referenced that Anthony Edwards in his first 4 years, like there were 4 years of college, and every year he had this awesome professor point guard that helped him get through, Rubio and D'Lo, and now Mike and stuff. At some point, you do kind of got to look at like Jaden, Nas, and Ant. Like, you're no longer second year guys, third year guys. There's no Mike tonight, and again, I really want to talk about that later because I thought that hurt, but I think a lot of it still has got to go back on. You can't. I mean, I thought Nikhil again tonight in a starting role gave them a ton of energy, and I think he started tonight over Dante because last night he gave them so much energy. But I mean, he's making $4 million a year, man. Like, he's
also 25. Like, there's a difference between the guys that you listed there as professors of Ant. Pat Bev was in his 30s, Rubio was in his 30s, Conley was in his 30s. And there was a veteran respect, and I think they had a clout there to be able to kind of be like, hey, and in Ant's 19, 20, 21, 22, in those years, they had a respect that they could lean on to kind of pull them. And now this group largely, and especially tonight with Mike not playing, is the Jaden age, the Nas age, the Ant age, and to me, they need to pull themselves through, because there isn't the same voices there. And frankly, they've just all ascended so much. Yeah, when Patrick Beverley was on the team, I mean, Ant, Jaden, and Nas were making like 10 mil combined, and now they're making 40, 65, 75, 80, like it's just a different time that puts a greater onus on the younger players. And I think that's what gives them the chip back, is understanding that the chip is on their shoulder. They need to like look internally to understand that something's going to change. I thought it was thematic that every player we talked to into the game, like kind of unprompted. We weren't like, hey, is Finch messing up?
This is, go into this a little bit because this is fascinating. And just this is more of a therapy session again, but this is just, I was in the locker room for 2 nights and it was eye-opening to get these types of responses that you're going to say now on questions that had nothing to do with the coaching staff or the head coach or any of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, basically the players just said it's on the players. We are just, Ant talked about, whenever we get fatigued or tired at all, we forget what to do defensively.
Yeah.
And what was Randall's, he said, it's a decision, it's a decision for us to lock in. We're drilling this stuff home in practice every single day and in film every single day. So it's our decision to choose to do it. And I don't think it wasn't them protecting Finch. Finch doesn't get fired. He doesn't need a protection in that sort of way, but I think it was them painting a picture of like, yeah, this is just us. Like, yeah, we just messed around and lost the Blazers. Because what stood out to me was the end of Ant's answer there, where he's like, against these teams, everybody expects us to win. Well, what these teams means, the bad ones, where they don't get up and they don't have that kind of motivation. Yeah. So against Sacramento, I kind of do agree with Ant. I think you're going to get a more competitive version of this team. I think we probably will see the chip on their shoulder. The problem is when they are tired or they are playing a team that doesn't just spark intensity in them, are you gonna lose those games this season like they did the first Gobert year? They lost that Pistons game on New Year's Eve. There's just like a bunch of games like that where they're just like, did not take the opponent seriously. And the reality of this situation is this is their choice. It's the decision, like Julia said. And if they don't make the decision to lock in, especially against the lesser teams, well, then you're going to just let some of these wins slip away, and you're going to be a 40-something win team rather than a 50-something win team. And in this Western Conference, I just don't think you can afford to do that.
Yeah, and I should clarify that, and this has been evident the last week, that it's not like the coaching staff is blameless or that they've pulled all the right levers.
Sure. Yes.
There's much blame to go around, but like I saw one person hit me up during the game of like, why isn't Chris Finch, not at the game, but like, why isn't Chris Finch yelling at Dante DiVincenzo to get the ball over the timeline? Well, spoiler alert, he was. You know what I mean? Like he was screaming at Dante there because the ball went out of bounds, so there's only like 5 seconds to get it across, and he just didn't do it. And they had, when's the last time you watched back-to-back games where a professional basketball team had a 8-second violation? You know what I mean? They threw 3 or 4, I think they were deemed lobs, off the shot clock or like the top of the backboard. Yep. Just a ton of, how many times did you elbow me and be like, dude, space to the left side? And they had all 5 guys on the right side of the court. Little things like that, again, the coaching matters and some of that, but it really is, and Ant said it the best, like Finchie's giving us the fucking answers. Yep. And we're just, not ignoring it in like the sense of, oh my God, you're turning your coach out. It's just,
sorry, go ahead.
No, they get out there, and it's a theme. It's a theme that you and I have talked about a lot offline. It's just what is you can go on Basketball Reference and NBAstats.com and like see where they rank right now in 3-point percentage, right? Or free throws attempted. You can't really see like what is the average IQ of this team like in a basketball sense. You kind of just got to like observe it and like make a lot of notes and see. And you're starting to see that without Kyle Anderson and without Patrick Beverly and without Mike tonight, not a ton of IQ. And that's the stuff that you just, if you don't have the IQ, because you're still learning, and like you said, Ant's 23 and Jaden's 24 and Nod's 25, then you have to have the effort. And the thing that stood out to me again tonight was the lack of effort from, those 2 guys and everyone else compared to across the way, these other 3 guys that are like Portland's building blocks and Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson and Klingon, who are all very raw. And some of those guys have already kind of been deemed to not be as good as people thought. And they just busted their ass all night long. Shaedon Sharpe had that kind of put back dunk that ended the game late in the 4th. It was all effort. Klingon played 14 straight minutes in the 3rd and the 4th. So, and those guys are 1 or 2 years younger than Ant. You know what I mean? So it can't be excuses. The Spurs loss, you can kind of chalk up of they were at Target Center until 1 a.m. and they had to get up and play like 16 hours later in a different city. They played in Portland last night. It's all internal. It's all in that locker room. That's what Julia said about making the decision, flipping the switch. it's those 15 guys. And there was no players only meeting tonight, but that's the type of stuff you probably address sooner or later. If it's just, hey, the coaching staff, the trainers, the bus driver, all that stuff, they got it figured out for the most part. What the fuck are we doing?
Yeah. I think the IQ, the basketball IQ part you're talking about, I always think of that as like precision. You know, how precise are you in executing your role or executing whatever the set is there, the defensive coverage. I think high basketball IQ players execute that more. And when we talk about, Ricky Rubio, Patrick Beverly, Kyle Anderson, like there was a precision to their game plan understanding and executing it. And then it's effort on top of that too. And the reality of the situation for this Wolves team that has really hot championship aspirations is you need both of those things. And for 48 hours in Portland, they've had neither of them. And at the ages that their players are, I don't think youth is a great excuse. I think it's worth noting too that Julius and Dante are new here thing, like that excuse is getting old even to them. Like Ant is like, that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
And a few of the players have been like, yeah, what Ant said today goes, Dante and Julius are like the only two new guys here. Like we're fine on that front. This isn't like feeling each other out. It's executing. It's being precise, and it's playing with an effort, irregardless of who the opponent is. And again, for 48 hours. And I think to that Miami game too, that, it doesn't have Jimmy Butler there, and you're like, all right, like we're going to roll. And then we got 2 games against Portland. I mean, it's what I was doing on the show like 2 weeks ago, where I'm like, man, this stretch in the first 2 weeks of November is easy.
Yeah.
And it was like on paper, it was easy. Those teams played hard that they've been playing against. It's games that they could have easily won had they played more precise and with as much effort as the opponent did, but that did not happen in these 2 games.
Yeah, and at some point, credit to Jay Frederick, because he kind of pointed this out too, that they do continue to say all the right things, right? Like you're in these locker rooms almost every night. Like they do continue to say a lot of the right things, but it's some of the same stuff that Ant said when he was in his second year and his third year. And again, like this is
all of this stuff sounds so much like year one of Rudy. Like I was just sitting as we did their interview with Ant, and he talked about chip on the shoulder. And Julius, we went to him, and he's like, it's the decision we need to make. Rudy saying we're not playing with the championship edge. I'm just telling, being there in the locker room for every time there, like it sounds like they took that cassette out and they plugged it in 2 years later. I don't know. I just used a cassette analogy.
Holy shit.
But what else would I? What else could I even
any
use?
Any other use of technology that's not from the 70s? No, but it just. And again, this has been a horrendously down, sad 15 minutes of a podcast.
This is where we should promote our live event in 48 hours.
But no,
that's what we're gonna do.
But I do think that. I actually do believe this. This isn't like the old school when I had to like get people motivated to write for free at Canis and stuff. I do believe that this is kind of just all chapters of not the Ant book that Chris is writing, but like a book. But at some point there does have to be some introspective thoughts and like reading of the own shit that you're saying. It's like, hey, was it like a week ago that Anthony Edwards was saying that he had a great talk with Draymond Green? He doesn't want to be a one moment guy and stuff. It's like, okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, dude, that was 6 days ago.
I love that. Like, yeah, you don't. And Rudy was the last guy we talked to tonight in the locker room, and he kind of closed his stuff talking.
Let's get to that for the second segment. Today's show is brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino, and Kyle and I are going to be at Treasure Island doing a live show this coming Friday night. It's a 9 p.m. game against the Kings. We thought it'd be an ideal time to do a live show. I honestly was like, this afternoon as I was thinking, I'm like, oh my God, they better win. They better win. So it's not 2 losses. And now I'm like, whatever, like they did lose 2 games. And if that, which I think for a segment of the fan base is, I showed you my text from my friend David, who's texted me before the game, is I'm not watching this team until they put in effort. And it's like, okay, if that's what you want to do, check out. That's
Listen,
That's fine. Everybody's got their own time. But I do know that there is a very large contingent of Wolves fans out there who are engaged with this team day to day, are not so emotionally attached to it that to angrily turn off the cassette player. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
The Wolves were down 3-2 to the Nuggets in that semifinals, and we hosted a live event at Falling Knife, and we just were like, hey, this is the vibe reset, and it kind of worked. And again, this has been a really tough stretch of basketball games for the Minnesota Timberwolves.
For sure.
They're 6-6. It's brutal. We're now into segment 2. I want to talk about Treasure Island, but they just need a little bit of a vibe reset. And every time Ant does say stuff like, we'll have it in the next game, he does normally kind of deliver. So Sacramento is not a lottery team. They're going to probably come out again. It's the cup. It matters more. They're going to come out Friday ready to play the Sacramento Kings.
We got to tell them do the ad read.
Yeah, no, I'm saying so come to Treasure Island. Like, if you don't like the team's effort, put in a little effort, drive 45 minutes down to Welch, Minnesota, because we were on a call today and it's way bigger of an event than I thought it was 24 hours ago. There's gonna be a ton of giveaways. We're doing a whole massive watch party after the podcast. More than ever now, I want to just get fan feedback. I want to just give everyone a hot mic and just let them say crazy shit and tell me what they see, because I've been at these games the last couple of nights. So
if you're frustrated, come ask questions.
But it's going to be quite possibly the best one we've ever done in these things. It's going to be
this is going to be fun. I mean, it's at a huge casino, in kind of the equivalent of a sports book. I'm really excited for you to see it. You weren't there when I went to tour it, but yeah, when I was on the call today. It's going to be 7 o'clock. We're going to start doing a happy hour. And then at 7:30, 7:45, we're going to start doing a live show. Me and you, and we'll get listener questions. But then they for these watch parties at Treasure Island, they really put a lot into it. There's going to be giveaways for Wolves merch. The TI is an official partner of the Wolves. So there's going to be Wolves related giveaway, swag that they're gonna give out. There's free food at all of their watch parties, so there'll be free food there, and just a bunch of Treasure Island experiences. I mean, this was the idea of our partnership with them, is that hopefully we would get people to understand what Treasure Island has to offer. And I genuinely, there's a lot more than I knew, 36 months ago when we started talking to them. So we would love if you guys would come out there. It's gonna be fun. And if you would like to get a hotel room, call 1-888-867-7829. This gets you 15% off a room if you want to stay the night there. Say you're coming for the live show, you can mention code Dane, and that will get you 15% off the room there. It again, 7 o'clock happy hour, 7:30 we'll say live show, some giveaways at 8:30, 8:45. That leads us right up to tip time at 9 p.m. and we will me and you will be there to watch the whole game with everyone who's there.
Yeah, come support us. Come support the people that support the show. Travel safely. Again, we're asking for a little bit of a commute here, and also too, because I had a couple people ask, free event. Just come on down, and if you don't want to stay the night, come up, ask questions, tell me what you thought about these last couple of games. A lot of cool giveaways. We really appreciate everything that Treasure Island's been doing, and it's been a fun partnership. So Friday night, November 15th. It's already Thursday morning now. We're doing this Friday, November 15th at Treasure Island.
And we're in Portland.
Oh my God. Come hang out Friday, November 15th.
Yes. You can go to ticasino.com for more details on the event. Kyle, let's move over to Rudy Gobert, because the audio clips that stood out to me was Ant saying that, playing up and down to the competition. And then, I wasn't exactly expecting this from Rudy, but Rudy did not play well today. There was not a juice to the way that he was playing. And it just didn't look like the guy who, 2 weeks ago was winning them games. He's kind of, honestly, since that Miami game, since he got benched, which I know is only 2 games ago, he just hasn't had much of a rhythm here in these 2 Blazers games. And I thought it was interesting that he did put these 2 losses on him. Here's Rudy.
If you want to be a championship team, we have to find that, within ourselves, find that edge, that championship teams have, and that doesn't not something that you turn on and off. You know, it's something that's got to be there. And I truly believe that it starts with me. And those 2 games are mostly, I think, on me defensively. I need to set the tone for the team, and I haven't done it those last 2 games.
These tonight.
So I'll be better.
He is the Kyle Anderson or the Patrick Beverley or the Ricky Rubio. I mean, he is the guy in his 30s. He is the vet. He has a different personality than those guys do too. But I hear what he's saying there. He's like, I can see that my young teammates in this game, who are all young because Mike Conley didn't play in the game. You know, their heads were not there. And I think Rudy recognizes, and I do think this is his job on the team, is to be the leader, to be the guy who gets everyone to play hard all 82 games. That is Rudy's best skill. That is what makes him an elite regular season player. I mean, I think he's a good playoff player too. I'm not going whatever. I'm not even going down that path right now. But what makes Rudy special, I've really grown an appreciation for him, is his consistency of effort and execution. He is a precise player,
right?
Particularly defensively. And so I do think part of putting this whole thing together is going to be about Rudy's ability to be a leader and get this group to have that consistency and play more of like the way that he normally does, which isn't how he played in these last 2 games.
Yeah, we've referenced Pat Bev a couple times. I think Pat Bev or even Kyle Anderson could lead a little bit with their words, even though they were never, either of them, like focal points of a team or like 35-minute-a-night guys. Rudy has to kind of lead more with his play, and that's what he has done throughout his essentially Hall of Fame career. But when I think of Rudy Gobert tonight in Game 2 against this Blazers team, I just think of like Shaedon Sharpe, Kamara, Scoot, all like going at his throat, like going to the rim, and there was very little rim protection. I mean, obviously the battle that Rudy had with Klingon was pretty epic just to see 2 guys that size going. But I just thought the lack of rim protection, and again, some of that is on the guys on the perimeter that are just like escorting them to the rim. But yeah, it was just a really bad Rudy Gobert game and a really bad couple of Rudy Gobert games. And again, this is the part we got to put a pin in it and be like, I don't think he's over the hill or that's it, or like, oh my God, here's France Rudy. But you know, as much as we want to be like, hey, Ant, you got to kind of stop talking the talk and kind of walk the walk a little bit. And Julius, like, you got to have a little better body language. I mean, with Rudy, it's like you do need to execute at a high level because you are. And because I was wanting to ask everyone in the locker room this, like, who is kind of the leader? And I think, and you just kind of said this, and I hadn't thought about it. It does kind of have to be Rudy. He might not be the leader of that locker room, but he's
that
the
type.
Yeah, he's the guy that, again, you've been blown away by how Rudy's just not going to let him lose those types of games. Tonight would have been one of those times you would have probably tweeted it out like, yeah, you know, Rudy had 18 and 14 and 6 blocks. He wasn't going to let them lose a back-to-back to the Blazers. And he played a role in them losing back-to-back games to the Blazers.
It was weird when they were like getting downhill and finishing at the rim on him.
It might be a slam ball.
He was just like behind, you know, like they were raising up to finish and he wasn't up there. Mm-hmm. He was slow. He was slow to his rim protection. And that's not a normal Rudy thing and whatever. I mean, whatever. You just got to be quicker, Rudy, do that. But I think what is basketball wise going on with this team right now since the Chicago game, because this is the first game it really showed up, where it's just they've started to develop this like really unhealthy relationship with staying home on their man versus help. And you know, they're against certain teams, you know, trying to load up on the ball. So you have the, you know, if you're Naz Reid, you have the gap filled here. So Kobe White can't drive through the middle, and then it's your job to be in and gap help and then back out, you know, to close out to the shooter. And I mean, in these 2 games, how many times has it just been like, all right, whoever is Naz is in, the guy penetrates, pulls Naz in a little bit more, kick, Naz can't even get back to contest the shot, or whoever. Not, this isn't just a Naz thing, this is everybody. And sometimes what happens is, like they do get out there, but they're still late in getting back out to the shooter. So now that shooter can straight line drive them. And Rudy's trying to be conscientious of not overhelping, particularly when he's guarding this 7'3" monster, because now Klingen's sitting in the dunker spot. If Rudy comes over, well, that's a drop off. That's a drop off to Klingen. That is 3 points. Rudy knows that more than anybody. That's like 80% of his career points that he scored is in that exact way. So there's just this like spiral that's going on there where it's like half step late to the gap help, half step late to recover, half step late getting there to cut off the straight line drive guy, which is causing Rudy to be a half step late. Everything about the Wolves defense right now is off a degree, and it's making Rudy the last line of defense, who is elite at being the last line of defense, not be a line of defense, and so there just needs to be a greater sharpness to the way that they play defensively, and they need to get it out of their head of like, oh, this isn't some elite shooter out here. Well, a lot of these guys, if they're taking threes in the NBA, if they're guys that are allowed to take threes, like they're gonna hit them if they're open there. Maybe I shouldn't even say this, but like the scouting report is out of the locker room, like on the floor of each of the players, and the scouting report on the 5 Blazers starters was flush contests out to Grant. You want to be running him off the line, and everybody else was to touch. Close out to touch. Even Klingen. How many times in these 2 games did they execute any of that? How many times did they run Jeremy Grant off the line? How many times did they get to touch on any other Shaedon Sharpe on the perimeter? No, it's these like slow, not chopping their feet closeouts, afraid of getting drove by. Like those are literally game plan execution mistakes that they're just doing defensively, and Rudy cannot bail them out of that. And I think that's what happened. That you would have hoped Rudy could have given you a little bit more, but until that stuff and that precision sinks in, I mean, Rudy's not going to be able, to save them defensively.
I think Minnesota gave up 96 paint points in 27 hours in Portland, Oregon. And that's against a team that doesn't really have a big guy, right? Because there's no DeAndre Ayton in the last 2 games. So, I mean, not that it's just big guys scoring the paint, but it's just...
Yeah, they played a bunch of minutes with, like, Jeremy Grant as their center.
Yeah. So it was just a runway to... I mean, as you were talking, I was just kind of daydreaming about that one possession against the Phoenix Suns in round 1, where, remember, it was just like the defensive death, and then Ant goes and kill shots and with a dunk. You're totally right. And again, that's why it's not all on...
Only one guy on the team plays defense like that anymore. It's Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Who else does that?
Right. And I mean, think about like Carl at times last year, who really upgraded last year when they were playing the best defense in the league and stuff, but he was still, had moments wherever that he was maybe the GOAT path in 300 or whatever.
Yeah, he would be the guy who was like a step short on stuff.
And half step late or half step late was a theme of your trip out here, not for you specifically, but everyone referenced it that, Nas kept saying, yeah, we were half step late on this rotation, or, the guy in the baseline. And when you mix this into this really diabolical cocktail of a little lack of effort and a little arrogance for a team that is coming off a Western Conference Finals trip and is, as Ant says, not trying to make it a one memory, movie type thing, all that, and then you're half step slow. I mean, that's the beauty as a degenerate watching basketball games live, is these guys are so fucking good and athletic and fast. It's a half step is all it takes for you to lose basketball games. You know what I mean? It's not like these crazy, the turnovers last night kind of highlighted that game, and they give up a bunch of threes, but just being a half step slow. I don't think you ever used that phrase last year to describe the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah, no, that's a good. That is a good point. I probably defensively, no.
Meat on the bone last year, but not half step slow.
Yeah, actually, I hadn't thought about being on the one. That is the issues that this team had at this juncture last season. I remember the first meat on the bone was when we were in San Francisco for the Warriors game, and it was one of the cup games. It was the Draymond, Rudy chokehold game, and I'll get to my point here. Like, the issue that the team had then was, it was just like, we're doing everything okay, but there's more stuff where we could clearly level up. We can we could get some more whatever. There was a whole bunch of different things. We finished like, this is okay, but there's meat on the bone there, and that's not where this team it is at right now. Like, I don't know, the food's not on the plate. Like
I was digging for an analogy there. I just kept.
I figured I looked at you like you would have one there, but that's the difference, right? This feels like the first Rudy season right now. It does not feel like last season when they went to the Western Conference Finals. Now, I'm not saying they can't get back to that. What then happened the first season is they never had the opportunity to catch that rhythm and to figure out how to play together. Because what was it, 20 games into the season, Carl gets hurt for that extended stretch of time, and now you're just in the wilderness, right? So I'm not at the point where I don't think that they can figure this out, and that this is going to be year one of the Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo thing is going to be like a quote unquote lost year, like year one of the Gobert deal was. But right now it feels like the beginning of the first Rudy Gobert season.
All right. I don't think you want to do this. This isn't in our show notes, but you got to give me 60 seconds on this, because we've talked a lot about the good old days and look how far we've come, friends, and everything we were just saying. And Ant's point about, hey, man, it's not a bunch of new guys, especially with this rotation right now, that you're lucky to get a little Rob or a little Josh. It's mostly the same guys that got you there last year, right? And on a night where Carl drops like 46 for the Knicks, we're going to do a little cat corner real quick. In a loss, right, for a 5-6 Knicks team, but a sentiment from a fan base that is very passionate and very smart is that they miss Cat. Dude, this defensive stuff is not all because they traded away Conley Towns.
No, defensive, no.
You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, we can talk about the offensive stuff too, but like, we can't just be like, if they just had Cat, all this defensive stuff would be better. As if Carl wasn't at times last year a much improved defender, but probably the 5th best defender out there at times, or the 4th with Mike.
100%.
So this is not they traded Carl, now the defense is bad. The Knicks defense is bad with Carl. This is internal. I saw it in your eyes. Like, Nikhil's the only one defending his ass off. It's not Ant. I mean, I thought Jaden had spurts last night.
Sometimes Jaden was better tonight. For sure.
Yeah. But I mean, like, those guys are giving you a little something, but in terms of meat on the bone, it's a full drumstick, right? Like, it's a full thing there. So I think it's unfair to continuously say, oh, it's only 12 games. And I do that a lot. But I also think it's unfair to just be like, well, they traded Carl and now everything sucks. It's like, it's still a lot of the same guys that won Defensive Players of the Year, or that were awesome all second team, all NBA guys, or all defensive guys. So they need to figure some of this stuff out internally. Like, this half step slow stuff. Is it because Julius just doesn't? I mean, Julius played under Tibbs. Like, I know he's not the best defender in the league, but it's got to be just internal, man. You got to stop looking out at what you had or what you got rid of. Dante DiVincenzo can guard. Julius Randle can, he can rebound, and he can kind of hold his own like Carl did last year. They got to lock in with the guys that were really locked in last year against Golden State in the Cup.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I think it's the difference more than anything is not, to me, defensively, is not switching in Randle for Cat. And not that I don't have gripes with what I see from Randle sometimes defensively, but I certainly had those with Carl as well. It is the collective intensity on defense. There is not a fly around mentality to their defense ever. They do not solve their offensive woes when they come up by shutting another team down. And that was last season. Last season was offensive woes with defense that shut them down. That was just like that was the whole theme of the team last year. And now, I don't know. I think it's a little bit better of an offensive team. It's hard to say that right now in light of losing to the Blazers some, but they just they don't have the defensive gear there where they can hit that. And I don't know. It is a lot of the same personnel, and I think it's on the current personnel to show Julius Randle, this is how we do it. Like, this is how we play defense. And And this is how Carl played defense. And this is how Nas played defense at the 4 last season. And yeah, like sometimes when you're the 4 and you're needing to fly around, it's going to be hard and you're going to get blown by. And there's going to be a difficulty to this. But that's, as Carl would say, it's Minnesota Timberwolves basketball, the fly around defense and that energy there. And that is foreign to Julius Randle, and it doesn't seem to me like anybody has explained to him, no, this is how we do this here defensively. Because Julius is a huge part of the offense, and you know, last night's game aside, been a pretty good offensive piece there. I don't think they collectively have a mutual understanding of what they're going to be defensively. They're just hoping they become last season's team.
We're doing a lot of thinking about the past tonight. And
you want to do the Conley part, or
no? Just there's one thing that has stuck out with me, and I haven't really mentioned it to you offline, but I really hated in the moment when they traded for Rudy Gobert, and there was all this talk about how they were going to unlock him on offense. And that didn't work, right? And now we're talking about that year 1 of the experiment, and I think there was a lot of discussions behind the scenes of like, hey, you know what? Maybe Rudy Gobert can't be the next Hakeem Olajuwon on offense. And they cleaned a lot of that up. And then, you know, in year 2, it really worked. I hated in the moment when I think it was game 2 or whatever. You'll remember this better than I can. When everyone on the team was like, yeah, we told Julius, like, you do you and we'll fit around you. I think that ends. I think that has to end by Sacramento because, again, you have a team, to Ant's point, he said it, we don't have a bunch of new guys. We have they have a system that works. It's the same coach. It's all the same people. Like most of the 85% of the same guys in the rotation. They have the guys that made last year the best defense in the league. And I think for Julius, who again, everyone that played tonight, we'll get into Rob and Josh and all these people. Everyone has blame. But with the Julius stuff, there's just too many times where you watch him and he's like a full step slow, right? Or he's ball watching. And again, maybe he is trying to acclimate to a very new scheme, but he also he's not even a goat path. He's just a wide open hole in the mountain that people are flowing through. So I don't really love the idea of like, Julius, you play your game and we'll all fit around you. No. This is
that's an offensive.
But just in general, like this is, he can play defense as well as Carl can play defense, in my opinion.
And it's like he said, it's a decision. And I think that's what I think that's internally what he's talking about too. I don't think Julius Randle is sitting here tonight thinking he's blameless in why the Wolves defense. Like, I think it needs to be shown to him a little bit more clearly what it is that he needs to do. And then it's on him, not shown to him, but like, I think it'd be really good if he had a game where he played that way, experienced it, and got positive reinforcement from that so as to be able to duplicate it, going forward. And a handful.
My last defensive take on this, then we can talk about the point guard stuff. But do you remember when the Wolves had a 4-on-1 tonight, 4-on-1 fast break, and they didn't score? I think there's a lot of times, and if you start to rewatch games, maybe this will get cleaned up. But I remember last year, the beauty of the defense was how they emphasized it then in transition or on offense, right? Like they would get a couple stops and then hit a big 3 or go on like an 8-0 run. It was like the dog thing you learned in AP Psych, where it's like the dog heard the bell and then he would come for the treat. When they get Pavlov, yeah, my guy Pavlov. When the Wolves, because they had a couple times tonight. I think when Josh was out there, they had like a little stretch where they got a couple stops. Even in like the third or fourth quarter, when they really were trying to claw back, like they strung together 3 or 4 stops. And they didn't reward themselves with the treat. They didn't go and try. I mean, I've watched this team run some of the worst 3-man weaves in the last 48 hours than I've seen all season. And that probably ties more into as we kind of wrap this up in segment 3 or whatever here, of like a lack of a point guard, a lack of, smart execution in transition, all that stuff. But that's another thing too, is like when they do, because they've played some good defense in all these games. I even thought in the last 2 nights, like they had like, hey, that was a good 90-second stretch. And then they did nothing with it. And that is different than last year, because when they got big stops last year and they played prison ball against the Nuggets, then they'd go out and go on like a 12-0 run offensively.
Let's talk about Mike not playing in this game and what did you feel that changed? Maybe walk people through what was different with Conley being out of the lineup, just even from who started and how that kind of.
Well, it's fascinating because you and I did a podcast last night at 2 a.m. and we were like, they lost to the Blazers. What's a lever to pull? And it's like, well, probably the guy that took a pay cut and is older and it's a back-to-back. And maybe you just tell him like, hey, you're not going to play tonight. You're going to rest. And I think by all accounts, that's probably what happened is they just kind of were like, hey, tonight we're going to give you the night off. We're going to give other guys a chance. You and I had a nice little side bet on who we thought it would be. I just thought Nickeil played well enough last night. Also, Nickeil has spots started for Mike in the past under this regime. And I think Finch probably felt more comfortable with him. So I went into this excited because not only do we find out before the game that Keel's going to start, but we also kind of got confirmation that the concept of a plan was that Rob and Josh would get to play a little bit, and they did. And then I watched that game, and then I told you
kind of like maybe.
And then I told
you Mike Conley.
And I told you in the car, like, and again, that's not to take away from Rob, and I want to talk about him, but probably the guy that slept the best tonight on the team flight down to Sacramento was Mike Conley. Because he can at least, and Mike would never do this, but like Mike Conley is not the problem. Mike Conley has also not been the solution.
Yeah.
But Mike Conley is not the problem here because, and this was the only like smart basketball thing I can present to this podcast tonight, but it started in the Miami Heat game. Teams just press them full court because they don't have really good ball handlers.
Yep.
Like they don't. Like the Heat created this, and now they've only played one team twice in a row. But Portland's, all these teams have fucking scouts. Like they picked up on that, and anytime DiVincenzo was inbounding the ball into a basket to go full court, they were pressing him with a guy. They had full court press 48 minutes of the game because they don't really respect the guys bringing the ball up. And what it led to, and I remember specifically going right to left, I think it was the first half, and Finch talked about this post game, it sped him up. And then Nickeil would like, I gotta use a lot of juice here to get by you.
That was one of the backboard spikes.
Yep. And then I got to get by you. And then it's like, I'm not going to turn on the brakes when I get the 3-point line. It's like, I have an edge, so I'm going to go. Well, that's exactly what Portland wants. They exactly wanted DiVincenzo or an Ant or a Nickeil to just get sped up, blow away any sort of structure or sets that they had. And now it's out. Like now that's the tell. That is the poker tell of like, you don't think Sacramento is going to throw someone on whoever starts at point guard in the first minute of the game on Friday? Absolutely, they will.
Yeah, it reminds me of the transition defense, the first Rudy year. I didn't keep. I don't know. Maybe I just have that year on my mind, but like, remember, it was just like the Spurs in one of the first games of the season. Just be like, we're just going to try and run this Towns Gobert front court off the floor, and success they did. And then you just saw teams for the next couple weeks until they began to address transition defense, run the Wolves. And yeah, it is in the scout now. I do think this is just kind of overall a little bit of why like things feel bogged down, the way they're putting two on the ball, the positions, the directionality that they're sending Randall. Like now the scouts have 10 games on this team, just like in general of tape. And they're not going to surprise anybody in that sort of way. I think what needs to happen is they need Mike. They need that. They need the old Mike back. And I personally, I still don't think it's out of the question that happens. I understand that he's a year older. To me, it doesn't I don't see a lot of like physical decline in Mike in terms of like speed, strength defensively, ability to move his feet. Like I'm seeing that stuff. The errors I'm seeing from Mike Conley are, to be fair, a lot of what the errors were today, just like making bad decisions in the half court and missing shots. That was the Wolves offense tonight largely. And Mike's been doing that, but I do feel a lot more confident in Mike Conley's ability to run the show than I do Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And it's great that he can do it, is he can do it sometimes. Dante DiVincenzo, I think, can play some point guard. I'd like to see a little bit more of it. We saw it in the preseason, so I'm holding on to a little bit of hope that he can give a little bit more there. But again, it's not his main thing. He's not the point guard. Ant too. For all of Ant, Dante, and Nickeil, there are diminishing returns to putting the ball in their hand as a point guard. They can do it sometimes and do effective things. Like Nikhil with the little like get action with Gobert on the side there, like he's got that figured out. It's a pretty simple diagrammed action where you're getting a screen from an awesome screen setter. Like he can do that. DiVincenzo can get you into spread pick and roll. He knows how to play that way. And he can instigate your offense in that way. But once you start overexposing them, and I think Nikhil got overexposed to being a point guard tonight, that's when he gets sped up. And Nikhil then goes from being your extremely consistent, effective player into part of the chaos. Mike has always been the antidote to chaos with this team. And unfortunately, for the first 10 games of the season, he kind of contributed to the chaos because he's just not been there. But this isn't going to work if they don't get the old Mike back. Is where I'm at on it.
I ranted to you 24 hours ago that I was kind of dying for Nikhil to get a chance to start, and then he got it, and now I'm going to like talk out the other side of my mouth. But I think one of the biggest mistakes we make as analysts, fans, parents, whatever, is that you see a guy who is really good as a role player, and you're just like, imagine if he was like doubling his minutes. It's like, that's not how this ever works in any sport, right? Like, that's awesome that your reliever who comes in the 7th and throws gas is awesome. He can't throw 100 for 7 innings. Like, he can't start and, go through 3 lineups of the rotation. So for Nikhil, I thought he gave them energy tonight. He did, I think, hit his first 2 threes for a team that only made 7 of 39 of them. So shout out to Nikhil for that. And I thought he played pretty well, but he did. He is not a natural point guard. No. He is a combo guard that's really good defensively and has refound his shot here in Minnesota. And it's been an awesome story. But again, as Mike is out and you need to have Mike back, and like, that's okay. That lever didn't really work. Mike Conley needs to be part of this rotation. Now he could come off the bench, like whatever you want to do, but you need an adult, you need a table setter, you need a real point guard out there. Nikhil didn't really have it. The DiVincenzo stuff, I mean, I know he's new. He's kind of going through like the Mike Miller module for a new employee for the Timberwolves, where it's like, you were an awesome shooter and you come in here and you just stop making any shots. So that's kind of concerning. But I will say, and people were clamoring for this, and it's weird because the box score is going to tell you that the worst plus minus on the team tonight was Rob Dillingham.
But before we get to Dillingham, can I interject on that? I do think you said you wanted Nikhil to start, and now you're like, oh, I don't know about that. No. My point is that was part of the idea. Part of the idea was trying something different so as to get a look at stuff.
For sure.
So as to even like, sometimes testing stuff out isn't just to test it out to see if it works. It tests it out to see if you can draw a line through it.
Yeah.
You know, and with Nikhil, I think we came into game 1 of the season with sort of like a line drawn through the idea that he could be point guard. But then for the first 11 games of the season, when he would have handling opportunities, he was really good. He's been really good as a spot point guard this season. So naturally, with Mike struggling, you're like, I do want to see more Nikhil. And Finch felt the same way and started him. And now you go, all right, yeah, there are diminishing returns to Nikhil Alexander-Walker. We can still play him at point guard, and there's 24 minutes a night when Mike's not on the floor. Like, he's going to have to eat up some of those. But he's not, if we do want to ultimately make a starting lineup change, it's probably not to have Nikhil be the point. I would assume, or that's what the input of tonight's game would tell you here. And this team and the starting lineup is trying to find something. They're trying to find a better group connectivity, and you're going to experiment with some things. And just because they don't work, I don't think that makes it a failure. It just makes you go, okay, well, maybe I do need to reposition my thinking on because where I'm at now is like, and I don't think I fully left it, but I think Mike Conley should remain the starter, and they should continue in that way. I hypothesized and last night being like, well, what if you just gave him the night off? Tomorrow it's a back-to-back, for rest, and it would allow you to see some more things. I don't hate the thought process behind that. I think it might have cost him the game tonight, that idea.
Yeah. Ironically, yeah, for sure.
I do.
That's on me.
But that isn't the end of the world. When this team is clearly searching for stuff, it's okay to search, I guess is what I'm saying. You talk about Rob.
No. Actually, we're going to have to pause that for a second because now you got my brain. Where I overall would give Nickeil a passing grade on starting at point guard tonight. But you were talking about testing things and experiments. What I talked about last night, and again, I'm both sides of my mouth, but I don't have all the chemicals for this experiment because the other thing was, I mean, Nickeil played 32 minutes tonight. I don't think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a 32-minute-a-night guy. But the reason I did that is because some of the chemicals was I wanted Mike to come off the bench and be more of a table setter because I was saying last night, just run DiVincenzo around like he's Malik Beasley. And we didn't get to see that tonight. So do I think Mike starts on Friday? Yes. But if it was Nickeil on Friday and then a little more of a structured second unit.
Yeah, that's a good point.
With Mike.
That's a good point.
And, you know, maybe some more Rudy there. Like I'm giving myself an incomplete grade because I think there's still more to that. And tonight, when you needed Nickeil, again, they shot 7 for 39 from 3. He hit 2 of them in the first couple minutes. Like, I think he gave you enough to be like, okay, you could start. Like, if this continues to get wonky, you could start, and then Mike would maybe be the first guy off the bench. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just he's not a show runner. Like he's a situational type of guy, and that would be, you know, a situation. And then maybe the next game that Conley has to miss, you go, if you're in your head as Finch, you go, all right, well, maybe I don't want to hand all of this creation to Nickeil because there's way too many like Nickeil downhill trying to finish at the rim stuff today, and be like, okay, maybe we lean in a little bit more into point Ant in this situation, or point Julius. Like I was thinking that during the game, and I'm like, what? Didn't it seem like there was very little like Randall initiation of stuff when he's supposed to be one of the point guards in the group as well? Like it just
when I remember watching Julius Randle play basketball tonight, a lot of it was against a smaller team in Portland. It was like, I'm gonna bully you, and it wasn't a lot of facilitation. And again, hard to get assists. Good segue here for Mr. Rob Dillingham. Hard to get assists when the guys that are catching the ball don't make the shots. Mm-hmm. But I don't think Julius had a great, you know, experience in Portland trying to set the table for his guys. So again, that was the biggest. I know the chip is how we started this, and that's the theme of this roster and this team right now. But the biggest game takeaway was that you didn't have Mike. We kind of saw that coming. You give Nickeil a chance, and it worked enough that I think you could do it again. But now I want to see what it's like with the second and third domino of can Mike come in and run a second unit, control his minutes, 22, 24 minutes. I mean, dude, let's just transition to Rob now. But like,
yes,
second night of a back-to-back, they did play 9 guys. 7 of them played over 10 minutes. Like that's
wait.
Let me do the math on that again. Yeah, that's right.
But I didn't get it.
They played 9 guys tonight with Josh and Rob.
Mm-hmm.
Only 7 of them played 10 or more minutes. Double
20
minutes.
more. Yeah.
To my point about getting pressured in the backcourt and, you know, not really having true ball handlers. I said this 5 minutes ago. Rob Dillingham was a team worst minus 13 tonight. Like he was the worst plus minus guy, plus minuses and everything. But I didn't care. Like I thought he gave you some real juice in the first half. Finch was right. In the second half, I think Rob was almost afraid to look for his own shot. He like had opportunities where it's like, hey man, this isn't really working. But in the first half, I just started counting. He had 5 assists that should have been buckets that were all I'm not talking like, oh, that's a nice pass. Wide open looks.
Yeah, could have been makes.
And they missed him. And I just thought when he was pressured in the backcourt, he didn't need that big to kind of float with him down court to like set the screen where they kind of go back and forth. Rob I can just take this guy by myself. I don't know if Rob's going to play on Friday against the Kings.
He's not. He is an extremely fun player and will be a very fun player, but he cannot do anything at the basket right now. Like he cannot do anything at the basket right now. And with the defense being a step behind, putting Rob Dillingham in to ever guard at the point of attack is going to hurt this team defensively. He also had 3 turnovers in his 9 minutes. And I'm excited for him, and I do think there are some ball handling things. The playmaking stuff has been intriguing the whole time. But if the team needs more guys to just pass to the open player thing that he did. But if that's what is he going to give you in addition to that? What is he going to do other than make this the simple pass. Again, what they need. But what are the other things? If Rob plays, we're like, Rob's going to play 18 minutes in Sacramento. Like, what are the things you think he is going to do that would help?
Love answering a question with a question. What is Dante DiVincenzo giving him right now?
Dante DiVincenzo is like known to be a very good NBA player who's definitely struggling right now. Rob Dillingham is a 19-year-old point guard, and the history of 19-year-old point guards in the NBA is it would be a large anomaly if he is an effective player, particularly at his size as a 19-year-old. If your argument is that it's more likely that he is going to have a productive game on Friday. I mean, this is me like taking on. I've heard a lot about this with Rob, and I like the pick. I like the player. I think it's naive to think, and I think tonight showed it. Like they went right at him defensively, and they will continue to go right at him. That doesn't mean he can't play and should be. I'm not saying he's like got to be at the very end of the rotation. I like this spot that he's in. I think this is exactly the role to me that makes sense right now. If one of your guards is out, you probably you're going to need more handling out there. And Rob's is going to need to play and should play because he looks comfortable handling it. And he looks like a good playmaker to find open teammates. And that's not nothing. I don't know what more we're going to get from him, and the likelihood that it's a really bad game is high given his size and age and the position that he's being asked to play.
No, I think we should go a little bit further than this because
it is shifty.
No, because I agree with what you're saying, and this team cannot say that their identity is defense right now. And we just did an hour on that, right? Like we talked about all the different guys. Maybe it's only Nikhil who's defending at the level he did last year, and Rudy's not defending as well as he did, and Jaden and Julius is having issues, and Mike, whatever. So to then look you in the eyes and say, hey, you know what then? How about Rob? Like, that's not the answer, right? Because that's not going to help defensively. And maybe I'm just so stuck. I think it was a 6-minute stint in the first, and then the second half it was 3, and then they really did attack him. I'm sure at halftime, Billups was like, hey, by the way, if the little kids out there, like, just go at him. They did that, and I think Finch probably wanted to play him 12 or 13 minutes. He's like, nope, that's enough. Pull him out. I'm just stuck on those first 6 minutes of the first half where I thought all 5 looks that he basically got them, like he did it, were there's not a guy within 7 feet of my teammate and they're missing threes. And again, whatever. I do think partly to blame if Dante and Nas, I think one of them was Ant, hit those threes, the game was probably over. You know what I mean? Like, I think if they blow it up to 16 in the first half, maybe that's all it is.
Well, okay, but those are two different things. Them hitting a couple of those threes does not make it a 16-point game.
No, but I think it would have kind of rewarded them for, hey, you came out in the first quarter and you played really well.
It would have been a good thing for the game, but I don't know. I mean, whatever.
People
are just going to get mad that
no,
that Rob Dillingham.
No, because you said 18, by the way, and I don't think Rob should play 18 minutes. I'm just coming into this thing of and maybe we just have to say what everyone said last night in Kumbaya, like 12 games. But there does come a point where, like, and again, I'm like such a DiVincenzo fan. Like, I just think it's a shooting slump. Last week was like, hey, Jaden's in a slump, give him time. He kind of came through for a couple games. You can't just like sit DiVincenzo now. But I think DiVincenzo's turning down shots. Like, I don't think he's out there tonight, like playing like he did at his peak Villanova boys Knicks thing. And at some point, if these guys are going to turn down shots and make turnovers and not do all this stuff, a Josh who had a really nice cut and a dunk, or Rob, like, give.
What are we doing, man? I mean, what has Josh Minott done that's been good? What is Rob? I mean, like, this is just in general, like, everybody wants to things aren't going well, and so it's change the 8 guys that are playing, but the 8 guys that are playing are so clearly the 8 best players on the team, right? Am I crazy here?
For sure.
So what does this look like? I mean, I agree with like the role that Rob and Josh have right now. It's uncomfortably short what they're doing with Minott, but at the same time, I don't know if, like, you're right, I did say 18, that was too much. But like I don't I don't like the idea of giving Rob or Minott like 2 6-minute stints each half, because that's going to come at the cost of Nickeil minutes, Dante minutes, Mike minutes. I mean, it's going to come at the expense of, yes, some players who aren't playing that well, but like,
no.
I
talk
just,
it out.
Yeah, I don't. It's, well, I mean, it's been, how many weeks has this season been going on? I mean, it's been 3 weeks of like this rotation is a disaster, and Finch needs to play more guys, or this is right. This is wrong, right? That's what everybody's been saying every single day for a month. And I think what you're actually saying when you say that is you don't like how the roster is constructed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. You know, that's not what I think. And I promised I wouldn't bring this guy up, but I'm going to have to now since we're going into Timberwolves alum. I brought up that whole Shake Milton thing, just about how last year, because I honestly, to God, cover this team almost as close as you do. And I kind of forgot Shake Milton was on the team last year. Like, that's just how long ago all that stuff was. But Shake Milton was part of a 9-man rotation from the jump last year against the Raptors through like early January. And they made it all work. So everything you just said is actually probably smarter than I was. And maybe I'm getting too blue sky brain. But is it the worst thing? You said it would come at the expense of cutting some DiVincenzo minutes. It would come at the expense of cutting some Nickeil minutes. Has any of those guys like earned 30 minutes? Nickeil probably has, but like, is it the worst thing if DiVincenzo is going from 30 to 25 right now?
Doesn't play 30 minutes.
But okay, whatever that X is it the worst thing if he goes X -5?
Yeah, if it's going to Rob Dillingham.
Okay,
probably, maybe I'm totally wrong, and maybe Rob Dillingham is the rare 19-year-old that if you give him an opportunity, that he will embrace it and he will roll with it and he will find success in it. There is like a 15% chance that he's good right away as a 19-year-old small point guard. I just do not think that is the profitable. I don't think that is like the profitable move right now. And we're trying to make changes because we don't like how the whole thing feels. And I agree. This whole thing does not feel good right now. Like the 8-man rotation as it is, it doesn't feel right. And the starting lineup feels weird. And last week we were talking about how, oh my God, like Nickeil, Dante, and Nas, when they're out there with any other combination of guys, it's way better. They're figuring this out, and they're not figuring it out fast enough, and they're not figuring it out sharp enough, and they're not trying hard enough, and they're not being precise enough. Like, I think that's what's going on. I don't think it's an issue that they have an 8-man rotation, because their 8th man is Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is the equivalent in caliber of player of a lot of teams' 4th or 5th best player. I just think that kind of puts a floor on the ability for a Josh Minott or Rob Dillingham, who they clearly want to play some. I just
no. I want
at the expense. I think Rob should have played tonight. This was the right time to do it.
I got you way too heated for 1:30 in the morning, and I think you probably
why do you always round it up so much?
Isn't no? It feels like
said too earlier.
It feels like it's Saturday, and Treasure Island was a great time. Thanks everyone for coming. I only do this because I'm kind of a petty asshole, but you're right. By the way, let's close this out, but let's kumbaya a little bit. They have 8 players that are just far superior in talent than the 9 through 15. Like the 8 guys we're talking about in the rotation, Nickeil is so much better than Rob right now. And it should be. He's 6 years older. He's been in the league for a while. But I am, and maybe I'm wrong, I am coming around a little bit to like Donovan Clingan's 20, and he gave it to the Defensive Player of the Year tonight. And that doesn't mean that you can draw a straight line.
He's having a great year.
But I'm just saying,
what are we doing, dude? He had a good game. He did have a good game. And I think Rob Dillingham could have a good games. I'm talking about like the likelihood of a given game, or the likelihood this season that Rob Dillingham is that. That is not the value. That is not the most likely.
So then I thought this is a good way to close, because people are now all riled up. Listen to this. Do you see, like, do those guys get folded
of course, everybody they want to play Rob Dillingham.
But again, I want to emphasize I was at the game tonight, and he was a team worst -13 in 9 minutes. And when he was out there, he did some cool stuff and his teammates missed shots and then they hunted him. You know how they like hunt Mike in some of those games? They did that tonight at an egregious level with Rob. And for a team that doesn't have their back line figured out and they don't have the best defense in the league, like that's a major issue. You put Rob on last year's team, probably a little better, right? Because they have the defense figured out. I am just talking it out with you. I'm just wondering then at some point, this is what a fan would ask is like, when do those guys, do they only get a chance this season when guys sit? You know what I mean?
I think yes.
Okay. Because that's what
tonight, I think I would have done the same thing. I'll just put it like that. I would have done the same thing. I would have played Rob tonight. You needed more ball handling, and he gave you more ball handling, and he gave you more playmaking in a game when your primary ball handler and your primary playmaker was out. That makes sense to me. If Jaden McDaniels has to miss a game because he rolled his ankle, I think Josh Minott should play.
Yeah, okay.
And that's just
I think the rotation stuff then is more about, do you see if these eight guys figure it out? And I actually do think they do. Again, we're 12 games in now. You and I are fighting in my office. But do you see them like, okay, now the 8 kind of figured it out, but now we're in game 42. Like we need to because okay, that's I think that's more of like do you see a vision come January where a guy's not out and those 8 guys are humming a little more, but now I do need to bring DiVincenzo down from X minutes to X -5.
Yeah, and I think that would
okay.
You know, on a long road trip, you have some back-to-backs. Yeah, I guess what's the way? Like in times of strife, guy out, bad schedule, someone's hurt or whatever. Then yes, you have good options to be able to put into your rotation. And I'm on the record a bunch in preseason saying I want Josh Minott to be the 9th guy. I didn't think it through enough. Yeah. I didn't think it through enough of how they would get to those minutes. And then also I didn't think Nikhil was going to be as good. So now I'm like, I'm a Josh Minott guy. I'm a believer, and I think the dunk helped him tonight, that maybe that'll make it more likely that he's got a little bit more confidence in his shot when he goes out there. Like I think that could all happen. And my stance on Rob is the same it's been since draft night. The most underrated part of Rob Dillingham that people I don't think talked about enough is he's got a lot of playmaking chops. When if you just watched him last season, he just seemed like a shooter. Like the player I'm really encouraged by tonight, that I saw that playmaking stuff not just come in the 4th quarter against the Sixers in Iowa. You know, like that was encouraging. But there's just a whole other level to be like, he should be a multiple stint rotation guy every night. And then the delusion that that's going to solve the problem by doing, or that it is likely that solves the problem. It could. I could be completely wrong. And if you gave Rob Dillingham 18 minutes a night, maybe it does solve their point guard issues. And maybe Mike Conley's washed and Rob Dillingham is here to save the day and they figured out the point guard position. I don't know. I don't think we're doing ourselves any favors by
I will say this, because this is
assuming more.
Yeah. Last night was a really embarrassing loss because you had everyone, right? Like you had Mike and you had a fresh group of guys coming off a bad loss against Miami. Tonight was the lever pull that we talked about, and they pulled some levers. And this will be like my motto moving forward in an 82 game season. They pulled some levers 2.5 weeks before Thanksgiving, and some stuff worked, and some stuff Rob Dillingham, a little feisty, got some guys open, had 3 turnovers in 9 minutes and was a -13, right? They can't, I'm with you. You can't force feed him minutes right now, because now you're just putting yourself even further behind an 8 ball that you're already in. I just would like to see now against Sacramento, Mike's back in the starting lineup. That'll probably make the most sense. Just continue to kind of pull some levers, because I do think, as pro Chris Finch as I am, and I don't understand what the coaching life is like, but I do think at times there's just a lot of delay or stubbornness to just try. I think this team right now at 6-6, they're not going to be a lot. I think this team needs to just throw tons of shit at the wall. And I don't think they need to get away. I'm not saying Rob should start against the Kings, but I'm just saying I think you got to continue to be a little more innovative with little things you do. I mean, tonight we saw it. I think it was because Jaden fouled out, but you saw Nas Julius and Rudy at least play together on the court tonight for a couple of minutes. I don't know how, I can't remember how it was, but that's, I think, what you got to, that might be the identity of this team for the next 10 games is we're in experiment mode, because you don't have last year's defense and you don't really have the, I don't know what you want to call it, the leadership or the veteran stopgap of a Kyle Anderson. Like, maybe that's what this team is right now. Maybe they're so in the weeds and in their own heads that these next 8 to 10 games is with those 8 guys, trying new rotations, trying new things, just continue.
So with the 8 guys, or at, what do you mean by the levers? Like, it sounded like what you're saying is
I think my ideal thing, which will not happen, would be that Nickeil starts on Friday and then like he's the first sub out and it's Mike in, but then you kind of lean into a second unit where it's a lot more. I mean, DiVincenzo, man, like we didn't really talk about him a lot. Maybe it's just a shooting slump. I just thought he turned down threes tonight that he was in the preseason just letting rip. You know what I mean? Like, you got to get him. Dude, they shot 7 for 39.
What is your thing?
I would start Nickeil on Friday, and I would bring Mike off the bench like first before they bring in Dante and Nas, and then I would have Mike run a really, to Finch's point last night, a really structured second unit that almost notoriously runs.
Would it include Josh Minott or Rob Dillingham?
I would give Josh minutes over Rob.
Would you play Rob?
Not play
Dillingham
Rob on.
or Josh
I would
Minott?
not play Rob on Friday.
Would you play Josh?
Yeah.
Okay, then I don't think we're that far apart. I would still start Mike. I would do the same thing. I would do the 8 guys. The 8 guys that they did for the first 11 games of the season. Obviously, I'm
a big Jaden guy, and I would give Josh some of Jaden's minutes right now. And I'm not.
I wouldn't do that. I would. Why? Because you again you think the likelihood that if you gave Josh Minott 8 of Jaden McDaniels minutes, you would bet that it would go better than if you gave Jaden those 8 minutes. Right? I mean, isn't that what we're asking here?
Well, now, yeah. I know it's just.
It's just. I that's where I'm at on it, and I think it's wishful. And Josh Minott, you know what? He might be better in those 8 minutes. I'm just saying I do not think that's anywhere close to 51% chance that if we, and it's not this binary, I understand that, but if you gave McDaniels, or if you gave Minott 8 of McDaniels minutes, that you would get a better production there. I don't think that. And I don't think that about Rob Dillingham, and I don't think that about Joe Ingles either. Like,
it is a fascinating conundrum.
It is. Because
you and I have never really had one of these online where it's like, it's a fascinating conundrum, because I don't think I said this to Jake, like, I don't think I know what the answers are, but I think there are still more levers to go. And it's not like this is a bad team. This isn't the Hornets, or like, I mean, no offense to the Blazers who just swept the Timberwolves. But when Klinger went out tonight, who came in? Dwop Wreath? Christmas wreath. Like, they didn't really have a backup option there. That's not what the Timberwolves have. They have plenty of guys, but it's just a fascinating conundrum, because I don't know. Like, I don't know. We're going to keep going round and round on this. I keep saying that, like, IQ and decision making and all this stuff. And then it's like, Ant played 40 minutes on the second night of a back-to-back, and it's like, he's only 23, but
your answer could be, I want to gamble. And that might even be a justified thing. But that's what anybody,
fair.
I will just say this to anybody who is thinking that, I think you're asking for a gamble there that could end up being proven correct. That, you know, that Minott is, in my opinion, I think it is unlikely that using Josh Minott or Rob Dillingham would be a likely upgrade. I find that to be, like, far and away, like, not a wise bet to make. Yet we're in agreement that you mix them in over the course of the season on back-to-backs when somebody's going to get hurt in the next couple weeks. Like, that's just, look at the Pelicans. You know, there's these opportunities are going to come, and I think they're in a pretty good place to, if any forward or center gets hurt, let's see Josh Minott. I'm intrigued by Josh Minott, and maybe he shows me more, and I raise my level of my belief in what he is. And if a guard gets hurt, all right, let's play some Rob Dillingham, and let's do that. I do not understand at all why it has to happen now.
Speaking of a smart gamble and a bet.
We're brought to you by Prize Picks.
I was going to say Friday night, November 15th at Treasure Island. If you want to hop on the mic and you have thoughts on this rotation or this this current 12-game 6-6 team. But yeah, also Prize Picks, because they had some fun numbers tonight for this Timberwolves Blazers game.
They did. Kyle, let's do 2 picks from Thursday night football tomorrow. I'll just give my 2 right now. I'm saying Brian Robinson. He's back and playing. I'm going to take him for more than 47.5 rushing yards. 47.5 rushing yards. I obviously there's always a risk with an injured player coming back of what they're going to be able to do or how many reps they're going to get. But I don't know. I mean, I like Brian Robinson at 50 yards in this game. And then Saquon's receiving total is only 13.5. Does that feel low? I said more than that. I'd say put a ton of research into this, but those are 2. Looking at it this afternoon, I liked. What do you like on Prize Picks for Thursday?
I love those. I also had Jaden Daniels. I think it's under 44.5 rushing yards. Ever since he had that rib injury, he has kind of stayed in the pocket more. So I just think he's kind of becoming a pocket passer. And then there's an AJ Brown one that I can't find AJ Brown over 28.5 longest reception. That is a 1-play entry type thing. But he has become kind of a deep ball fiend. I think these Thursday night games have, as the season goes on, and have become a little more stretched out, a little more high scoring. I think there's a couple of deep shots to AJ Brown against that Commanders secondary. And so over 28.5 as the longest reception for AJ Brown.
Love it. At prizepicks.com on the Prize Picks app, you can submit a daily fantasy lineup for Thursday night football when you're listening to this tomorrow. And also they have all of these stat totals up for NBA games as well. We were just look when we were driving over to the game tonight, we're looking at the Wolves ones. We're like, well, we didn't know who was going to start or anything. And you're like, well, if Nikhil's starting, he should, we should go with this. So if you're not a football guy, I know we talk about Prize Picks and football often, but do check it out for NBA as well. All right, Kyle, that was a bit of a marathon.
Are we still going to get breakfast tomorrow? Are we still friends?
Yes.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating to be here. I appreciate what you always do for me and let me come on these trips and stuff or come check out these games. This is the team right now that I would imagine internally, coaches, players, both combined, is having talks like this. It's just frustrating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, well, because what we're both doing is sharing an opinion that we don't have a strong backup to it.
Right.
I can't be like, look at this. Kyle, the 8 guys on the team have been awesome. What the fuck are you talking about? No, they haven't. I'm just, and maybe my brain is way too math and not enough art to it.
And it's proven to be right a lot more than my art brain.
But there is time and a place, for that too. And maybe there's been plenty of examples in our time covering the Wolves or just, watching the league or whatever, where sometimes when you throw a different ingredient in there, it changes something and makes the rest taste better.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think there's a chance of that with Rob Dillingham or Josh Minott in the mix here tonight. That it wasn't. That didn't help.
Yeah,
they were not the right.
I want to just, before I end this, I tried to compare a 20-year-old starting center on a lottery team that's going for Cooper Flagg to Josh and Rob are 20 and 19 trying to get minutes on a team that made the Western Conference Finals, and I think that's part of what's ingrained in your recipe over there in your meal. But at the end of the day, this team is 6-6 in a Western Conference that is volatile and so loaded, but also there's a lot of teams that have injuries. The Minnesota Timberwolves don't have a lot of injuries right now, knock on wood, and they're still just underperforming. So, what did someone say on the YouTube comments? I care, Dane. I'm passionate. They got a long time to go. They got 70 games to try to figure this out. That does not mean that the sun will just rise at some point, but it's a fascinating thing. And as fun as last year was, and this is the part that people don't like, but as fun as last year was, every night being, hey, look how far we've come. I love some of this stuff because this is a lot harder than last year when it kind of just all gelled. There's a lot of frustrated dudes in that locker room that still believe in the coaches, and the coaches believe in the players. But 6-6, you are what your record is, and this is a 500 team right now in a league and in a Western Conference that you can't really take any days off.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be Friday against the Kings is gonna be another
Crazy.
test, and it's gonna be yeah, a different level for this group. I appreciate you staying up with me to do these pods for this 4th year in a row, back-to-back Portland games.
Yeah, shout out to Adam Silver,
we've done that.
our friend, Skims fanatic. I know you're a Skims fan too, but it's like the only time it's ever happened, right? Like it's like they don't really have any of these other back. I mean, they've had back-to-backs, but
in
for some
Portland,
reason they come out to the Pacific Northwest and they kick it for a couple of days, and I appreciate it.
and lose to the Blazers.
I have not covered a win since May 10th, I think. So I'm out.
You're out.
Rob gets my minutes.
This has been Kyle week. I guess it continues on Friday. We'll hope to see more. Well, we will see more Kyle for sure on Friday at Treasure Island, but hope to see a lot of you too. You can follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle Theige and listen to him on Flagrant Howls with Phil Mackey. Next up, I'm traveling back to Minneapolis tomorrow, so no pod on Friday. There won't be like a pod that comes out on Friday morning or Friday afternoon. The next pod will be live at Treasure Island on Friday night. Now we'll be recording it before the game, but we'll put that out there as well for people to listen to on Saturday. We'll kind of talk about some bigger themes of the season when we're there as well. So until then, with Kyle, he's Kyle. Follow me on Twitter at Kyle Theige. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA. Until Treasure Island, peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.